And then, the environment was cleaned up.
The first time I was hearing about this stuff, it was totally new to me.
With social impact consulting. Hello everyone, my name is YIAGA with Social Impact Consulting. I'm a development consultant with 20 years of experience working with NGOs, international NGOs, and bilateral agencies to work in project support, monitoring and evaluation, and civil society strengthening. So now, I saw that local NGOs lack the capacity to manage large-scale projects, which can in turn impact their various communities because they have the connection based on their backgrounds. So this made me create this channel so that I can add value to you for free once you subscribe to this channel and get notified of upcoming videos. I look forward to hearing from you. Hello everyone, how you doing today? Welcome to another episode of the Development Sector Series, which is Devsectorseries. Yay! So thank you all so much for being here on this morning. Please make sure that you like and share this broadcast so that we can reach more people. So if you're interested in being notified when we are live, please join our mailing list. Let me know where you're watching from so that I can thank you personally. So please follow and connect with me on all my social media handles for future updates. If you have any questions about the discussion of our special guest in this program, please make sure you include it in the comments so that we can engage in an interactive discussion. So just a couple of quick announcements. Social Impact Consulting's website and e-learning platform will be launched in a few weeks. So I will keep you guys updated with further details. So for those of you who are on Facebook and LinkedIn, visit my profile and Social Impact Consulting profile to please fill out the poll. Thank you so much for watching and your support. Please remember again to like and share this video to help the algorithm show this to more people. So let's get to today. We're going to answer the million-dollar question. Are credible elections attainable in Africa? Well, our LinkedIn poll shows that 56% of people said yes, 30% said no, and 15% said maybe out of the 56 people who voted on the LinkedIn poll that I put out a couple of days ago. This makes me so happy that I am one of many others who still have passion and hope for the African continent. Our guest today, Mr. Samson Itodo, the Executive Director of YIAGA Africa Initiative, who is an organizer, a policy analyst, and election expert who is passionate about justice and equity for the people of the African continent. He has been nothing but supportive of my passion for the development sector from the very beginning to empower organizations to maximize social impact. I am so humbled today and grateful that he was able to make time out of his extremely busy schedule to join us. So I am going to be covering his bio shortly. Again, please like and share this live streaming so that it gets to more people, okay? All right, see you shortly. Episode of Devsectorseries features Samson Itodo, the Executive Director of YIAGA Africa Initiative. Samson Itodo is a community organizer and development practitioner with 13 years of experience in election, parliamentary strengthening, constitution building, youth development, and community organizing. Under Samson's leadership, YIAGA Africa
led the movement for the reduction of age limit for running for public office in Nigeria. He also provides strategic policy advice to parliamentary committees, electoral commissions, political parties, and international donors. YIAGA Africa also emerged as a leading civic organization, promoting political inclusion, electoral integrity, and public accountability in Africa through citizens' engagement, data, technology, and policy advocacy. He has initiated numerous democracy and citizens engagement projects in Gambia, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Ethiopia. The impact of Samson's work earned him recognition from the following international and local organizations. In 2018, he was appointed by the Gates Foundation as a goalkeeper. In 2018, the Rising Democracy Leader in Africa by the National Democratic Institute in Washington, D.C. In 2018, the Future Africa Award Young Person of the Year. The 2018 Outstanding Young Person of the Year Award by the Leadership newspaper. In 2017 and 2018, he was recognized among YIAGA's 10 most powerful names in advocacy and the 100 most influential people in Nigerian politics. He is also a fellow of the following institutes: the Archbishop Desmond Tutu's Leadership Program, the Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance at the University of Cape Town, the International Visitors Leadership Program of the U.S. Department of State, the Swedish Visitors Leadership Program, the European Union Visitors Program, and the UK International Leadership Program. In March 2020, he was recognized by the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria as a Nigerian star for his achievement and service. His work has been featured by various local and international media stations. He holds a bachelor's and master's degree in law, and he has a Master of Public Policy candidacy at the University of Oxford Blavatnik School of Government. Allow me to introduce to some and present to others Mr. Samson Itodo.
Hello, Samson. Good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, Efwa. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for the video. I'm most humble.
Worries.
Thank you.
No worries. I definitely just want to really appreciate you for taking time out of your extremely busy schedule to join us. And I just want to even say, even publicly, that you have been my greatest supporter in terms of my passion to empower nonprofit leaders and social entrepreneurs around the continent. So I really do appreciate you for your extreme support. Thank you.
No, the pleasure is ours, and thanks for being inspiring as well. Do
Thank you
appreciate
so
and
much.
great work you do. And I want to encourage anyone who is really interested in development, who is interested in social change and social impact, to support this cause, because I believe in the vision and what you try to promote, because that's what Africa needs, if we're going to leapfrog our development.
Thank you so much. So I guess we're going to get started to attempt to answer the $1 million question that, about credible elections in Africa. Because in fact, I put out the question on a poll on LinkedIn, and you had most people were between the yes and the maybe. So you had over 55% say yes, you had about 30% say maybe, and then you had about, it was about 30% that said no and 15% that said maybe. So at least well over half is like, okay, we're yes and on the fence. So we're going to work to really tackle this issue. And I'm just happy that so many of us are still believers in credible elections in Africa.
Mm.
So Yeah.
Yeah,
So
well, wait. I'm looking forward to the discussion. But thanks for
yeah,
sharing the data and the outcomes of the survey. Thank you.
definitely. So we're gonna get started. I want to start with you in terms of your journey. So, what led you to international development? Because you have the brains to just be on your way to corporate law, international law, become a big shot lawyer. So, what took you to this journey to the development sector?
Well, that's an interesting question. Come to think of it, why did I get involved in this journey? So first, it's about the passion that I have for community service and development, and I would say that my family, um, inspired this thought, as well as inculcated in me, these values of community service, and the values of excellent community leadership. And so I grew, just appreciating the fact that, we exist to serve our community. And, one of the things that taught me a great lesson in this life is when I was growing up and still growing up, when I was much more younger, during festivities, I'm sure your families also did that during Christmas or New Year or the Easter celebration. My mom will cook food, and I'll be the one because I'm the first son and the first child. So I'll be the one that will go around houses, distributing food to people, particularly, those who are poor and those who couldn't afford eating 3 square meals, in a day. So I'm the one who's responsible for that, and that became part of my culture. And for me, it's about community service. And then, of course, I went to school, and I've always wanted to be a lawyer. To be a lawyer, not to make money, even though money is good, but to be a lawyer to fight the cause of justice. And for me, the struggle is a struggle of my life, and it's looking up to something greater than you as an individual, and transforming your society, because our society that will not change if we as inhabitants of the society don't take bold and intentional steps to fix the challenges of our society. And one of the challenges that I decided to frontally engage is the inequality, more around political inequality in our society. And all through the university days, I could see inequality, being institutionalized, where leaders of student union governments are unable to speak out without any form of intimidation, which became the response of the school authority to students' demand, for their rights. And I thought that this is the life, right? That we have to change our society. Like we normally say, we die here. We will live and die here. But this country and this continent that we inherited is not a continent of our dream. And so we have to take steps. And that's, for me, I've just been that active citizen, just doing the little that I can with the support of my friends and partners, and also building strong alliance with other people, other Africans and young people who believe that we can change our society.
Definitely. Thank you for all you do, the sacrifices and the time that you're using to really make an impact and living a life beyond yourself. So now you've mentioned to us that this is what you do. So now you could have picked and selected anything. You now decided to focus on elections. So what was the drive behind that?
Well, I focus on on four things, and elections is just one of them.
It's one of them, of course.
That's also the main one because I focus on elections, I focus on constitution building. I'm an enthusiast of social movements and community organizing, and then also leadership, particularly public leadership, and that feeds into things like legislative leadership or legislative governance and working with the National Assembly. But at the end of the day, it's all tied to how do we make democracy, deliver to the people and to deliver to our society. And what inspired me to focus on elections? Yes, democracy is signposted with elections, but democracy isn't just about elections. But the leadership recruitment process that we have within a democratic setting is elections. So elections provide you that vehicle to select or to hire and fire leaders who you vest with the power and the authority to take decisions on your behalf. And so if we have bad leaders like we have in Africa, if we have leaders who don't care about the people, if we have corrupt leaders, if we have incompetent leaders, if we have leaders who do not uphold the values of integrity and accountability in public office, then we are toast. And the reasons why we are also where we are, after how many decades or after 22 years of democracy, if you look at Africa, like Nigeria, other countries, it's a failure of leadership. And so the only leadership recruitment process that we have, particularly for a democracy, is elections. And so if we fix elections, the probability that we would have leaders that will be accountable to the people is very high. But I also need to underscore that credible elections are no guarantee that you would have good governance. And that's why in my earlier remark, I did say that democracy aren't just about elections. There are more to democracy than elections, although elections seem to be one of the venerated vehicles or principles of democracy. So that's why I'm very focused on elections. The leadership recruitment process is an opportunity for citizens to assert their sovereignty. Because if democracy is about government of the people, right, then the people exercise, their views and their franchise in an elections, and not just elections, because you also have other sort of deliberative or representative democracy tools. So things like referendums, which are direct democracy tools or initiatives, are also a vehicle that citizens can speak. But if you take citizens out of democracy, what you have is no longer democracy.
Yeah, exactly. It's really something that you're saying. You're saying this because I even want to segue a bit to there's going to be, and hopefully Samson, you'll be able to participate. We're going to be having a global civic space discussion series on Saturdays. I'll be announcing it moving forward because, like you said, if citizens are not involved in democracy, then there is really a big issue. And even talking about the referendum, that's a huge topic. That's a hot button topic, in Nigeria as we see it. And hopefully we're able to push for better governance, not just in Nigeria, but for the rest of the continent as well. So I'm just gonna segue to go down to your experience in election observation. I mean, you've worked on gubernatorial election observation with your team and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers, and then with your team in the national election in 2019, which was a huge movement for YIAGA Africa, Watching the Vote, and all partners. And not just in Nigeria, you've observed elections as an international observer in other countries as well. So based on your extensive experience, what are some of the common themes you've observed in election observation, especially in Africa as we know it?
I think the first theme is politicians are not interested in democracy. Politicians are only interested in capturing power, and they focus more on using power to settle inter-elite wars and not necessarily use power to advance the development of the people. And the reason why this is crucial is until democracy delivers to the people. Because the whole essence, of elections is, hey, let's select leaders that would do what? That would legislate on our behalf, that would advance the common good. And the public good in this case is, the pursuit of liberty, the right to life, as well as, the pursuit of happiness. And if people cannot fulfill their potential in a society that is led by people whom they have vested, power, authority, then what you have is an antithetical society that does not uphold or that does not believe in democracy. So that's critical. So politicians are not interested in democracy, and I need to underscore that. They are more interested in what? In elections, in capturing power. And why is that the case? If you look at political parties across Africa, the challenge of candidate selection permeates every aspect of electoral politics in Africa. It's either you have political parties that do not have just basic or respect for the basic tenets of democracy. You see situations where the candidate selection process is monetized, highly commercialized, or you see cases where competent people with character are not given the space, to lead. And the process is for the highest bidder and the highest spender, because they only want to get power, to advance their own cause and for their self-serving purposes. That's why today the electoral space is dominated by the highest spender and the highest bidder. And so that's one. The second point, and the great lesson, is if you've got weak accountability institutions, you cannot advance democracy. Weak electoral commissions that are not independent, that are subservient and are vulnerable, to intimidation by incumbents, you're not going to have credible elections. And that's what we saw, even in Nigerian elections, where the executive, didn't release or delayed the funding of the Electoral Commission in the 2019 elections. Now, that's one way to rig the elections, because elections themselves are they're capital intensive, but they're also a human activity that requires a lot of sensitivity, due diligence in managing the complexity of logistics management. And so if you have a large country like Nigeria, you need a robust logistics management plan, to deliver on elections. And if you don't provide the monies for the Electoral Commission, for God's sake, where are they going to get the monies to do what? To procure ballot papers and result sheets and pay the personnel that is required for elections. And so incumbents, use the power that they have to undermine the Electoral Commission and make them incapable of conducting, credible elections. And tied to that is the question about the assault on the independence of electoral commissions across Africa, where appointments are either delayed or politicians appoint their cronies, into electoral commissions because they want them to do their bidding. So that itself, places electoral commissions at a very disadvantaged point, and it weakens their ability to conduct credible elections. The third sort of stream, it's the securitization of our elections and the role that armed forces and military men are playing in our elections. And I dare say that the greatest challenge of elections in Africa is the ruling political class. And that zero-sum nature, that attitude of do or die politics, that seems to be the guiding philosophy of seeking for public office, is the greatest threat to our collective growth and development. And until we have politicians who care more about the people, who approach politics not from a do or die perspective, they won't, utilize or deploy security agencies to undermine the Electoral Commission, as well as snatch ballot boxes or intimidate voters from participating in the elections. The fourth issue is around the turnout of voters for elections. From South Africa to Nigeria, what we are seeing is a decline in the turnout for voters at elections. And why are people not turning out to vote at elections? In a study that YIAGA Africa conducted, in the 2019 elections, one of the main issues why people are not turning out to vote, you'll be shocked, is the failure of governance. Because when people go out to cast their vote, they stand under long queues, some of them in the rain, in the sun. They defy all odds to vote for leaders that they believe when they get to office, they will provide the leadership that they need. They will provide water, they will provide health care, they will provide quality education, they will provide security, they will provide for their welfare. And what happens when the people get into office? They become unreachable. They begin to take questionable decisions that sometimes you wonder, is there a place for rationality or morality in public leadership? And so people have been disappointed, with the quality of leadership and the fact and the failure of governance. And so it makes no sense why they should do what? They should come out to vote, because when they run their own cost benefit or conduct their cost benefit analysis, it's just clear that the cost of voting is very high and the benefit is very low. So therefore, as social beings, they prefer to just stay back and not care. But then, is that the solution? My point is no, it's not the solution. Because the more you stay out, you stay away from voting, the more you're going to have leaders that will continually plunder our resources and not provide the leadership that we require. So if you ask me about the sort of the common themes that I have seen in elections in different parts of our continent, it's just the same. Think about Liberia. I was in Liberia during the last election, both in the first and the second round. There was a lot of support, and citizens came out to vote for a leader of their choice, someone who they thought, was popular, understood their pain, and came from the grassroots and came from a very poor and humble background. But what happened when he came into office? The same person who is a beneficiary of electoral reforms, who is a beneficiary of human rights, decided to assault on the rights of citizens to free expression as well as access to information. So you just see that, yes, there's no incentive, for voters to come out to cast their vote. But as much as there's this incentive, I'd like to say that there's no alternative to voting at elections, and people should come out en masse to exercise their franchise and get the leaders that they want. The Nigerian story is a very unique one. The integrity of the process is improving on a daily basis. We're not where we used to be. I know in 2007, even in 2011, the level of electoral malfeasance that that plagued our electoral process has drastically. We still have electoral malpractice in Nigeria. Yes, with a different form. Yes, it's manifesting in a different form. But our vigilance and our consistent participation is what will keep these reckless politicians that we have in check.
Well, that is quite extensive. Sometimes I kind of think that the politicians come from the people, so hopefully our value systems get better so that when we go into office, we remember why we were there. So as we're going through all the reforms,
it doesn't work that way. There's something I don't know, and my hypothesis may be wrong, but again, I have seen public leaders who lose their sense of rationality, who lose their sense of humanity when they get into public office. And the reason is just simple, right? It's power. Power is powerful, right? And that's why they say absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Sure.
And when we talk about leadership, that's why it's important to emphasize the essence of values. People who are grounded in values are the ones who should have access to our public office.
Exactly.
Because people who are not intoxicated, who are not carried away with the spoils of office, who recognize that they are voted, by people, and they owe those people that responsibility, and not the kind of folks that we have in public office today. What you just see is public office have become a criminal enterprise. You just have people who are recycling themselves in office. They have no regard for the people. No regard for the people. They don't even have just the basic values of loyalty. Why do they jump ship? They move from one party to another. And
Yes,
you
yes,
ask yourself,
yes.
wait a minute, don't we have just there's a recent one that happened, where a Supreme Court, one of the governors in Nigeria, who didn't win the elections. He didn't win the elections, but the Supreme Court granted judgment in his favor because the other party, didn't conduct valid primaries. And so by luck, this other candidate was declared the governor of a state. But what happens, 3 years after or 2 years after, he decides to decamp to the party that was disqualified in the previous in his previous elections. And you ask yourself, is there a place for morality in politics? These are the kinds of circumstances and developments that young people see, and they really question what are the values that shape our politics. And I think that we've got to have that conversation, because when people go into public office, they must note that public leadership is underpinned by core values, and those values have to be upheld. And if an individual has no respect for those values, I don't think they have a place in public leadership. They should remain in their bedrooms and in their living rooms and not
Yeah.
play in the public arena. Because when you come to the public arena, there are certain values that regulate that space, and those values have to be respected.
So let me just transition to the next question, because I think we talked about political parties, and they are the very bedrock of the quality of options that the people have to elect. So what is their role in credibility? Because like we just discussed about value systems. So it's those values that may have to be selected by political parties to present the public viable options for us to vote for. So what is your take on that? What is the political parties? What is their role in the credibility of elections?
Well, as you know, our electoral system does not permit independent candidacy, although I think in the First or Second Republic we had independent candidacy. I'm sure with the ongoing reform process, the National Assembly will pass the independent candidacy law, and hope the states would also assent to it, because twice have the National Assembly passed independent candidacy, and twice have the state houses of assembly voted against it. We hope this time they will throw the part of honor and pass the independent candidacy to open up the space. But until that happens, political parties are the only institutions that are legally recognized, to present leaders for voters. And my sense is, therefore, choice is compromised. Now, the choice of voters is compromised ab initio when political parties don't field competent candidates. And so if you look at the process for selecting candidates, one is the delegates, the primaries, the conventions. How are delegates selected? How transparent is that process? Who is in the room when delegates are selected? And you can see it's about the highest bidder and the highest spender. You come to the primaries. Do the parties take time to screen the leadership credentials of candidates before they field them? Or you just have hegemons within the parties who determine who becomes a candidate of a party? And that has been the source of this avalanche of pre-election cases that pervades our electoral process, with lots of pre-election cases challenging the credibility of primaries, or also challenging the qualification, the eligibility of candidates presented by parties. So the parties are complicit in this when they don't, first define the values, the leadership values that defines candidate not selection process. I've not seen any party that has engaged in this serious discussion around leadership to say what's the kind of leadership that we need. What's the kind of leadership are we going to provide? But it's just been about, former military dictators, former governors, former this and former that. It's about the former. And the argument is you need people who are experienced. And my question is, the fact that someone is a former governor does not mean he's got, the leadership capital to provide excellent, transformative, innovative, and accountable leadership. No, it's not guaranteed. So I don't buy the experience argument. I think parties need to look broadly and define the ethics, the values that would shape the leadership selection process. And it shouldn't be about the amount of money that someone has in their bank account or their loyalty to certain individuals within the parties. It's just sad that what the parties have done is to reward loyalty and sycophancy with a seat in the National Assembly or with a seat in the State House of Assembly. No society makes progress when political parties are not presenting high quality candidates to run for office. And so voters are left with no choice. Perhaps it's also one of the reasons why people don't also vote, because at the end of the day, they're only voting for people who have recycled themselves in office, people who have been ruling us since 1980 something, in the 80s, in the 90s. For heaven's sake, we are in 2021. We need a new lease of life. We need new leaders. We need new actors who can take us to the next level.
Man, that is really something that you say that. I think this is a bit of a conundrum because, with what happened in the United States in the last election, we had, in terms of the Democratic Party trying to scramble to get a viable candidate against the incumbent, and then the independent candidacy were not able to have a strong independent candidate. So it's like, I guess it's a conundrum that we have to kind of navigate our way through in terms of making sure that there is a holistic value system for people to for us to come up with people electable to lead our countries in Africa.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that needs to be informed. You need and there are several conversations in Nigeria. There are several conversations in Africa about leadership. Does leadership count? Does it really matter? And let's, if we want to unpack this leadership, it's just simple. It's value-based leadership, right? If you are trusted with power, what will you do with power? Will you care for the people? Will you be willing to constitute a team, that can work with you? Because leadership is teamwork. You don't need to have all the knowledge, right? A good leader is not one who has all the knowledge. A good leader is one who knows how to learn, who knows how to identify and harness potentials in people. And the aggregate of that is what you use to drive development within your society. A leader who recognizes that we are diverse and our strength lies in our diversity. Not one who is very primordial, and also parochial in their approach to leadership and not inclusive. Leadership, that recognizes the fact that, questions are what defines democracy, and not ones who are angry and upset and feel that no one should question them because they have the political authority to act. It doesn't work that way. Or leaders who scream up the roof because voters, their constituents, send them text messages and call them to say they want to express their opinion about certain legislation. It's not leaders who sit in the federal capital and not go back to their constituencies to consult with the people over bills and over motions that they pass. Not leaders who stand up in the National Assembly or State House of Assembly to claim they represent, the good people of this ABCD, but yet they don't even have connection with the people. Those are not the kinds of leaders that Nigeria needs. But we need people who have a clear vision and a roadmap on how to achieve that vision. But when you have visionless leaders, you're just going to exist and not live, because these are two different things as a nation. You just exist and you'll be recognized in the Committee of Nations that yes, you are a nation. You exist as a country called Nigeria, but you're not living. And the question is, what is the quality of life of the average person in Nigeria? Can Nigerians feel secured in their home? Can Africans feel secured in their countries? Right? Because governance is pretty much about providing the welfare and security of your people. But how do you claim, you're providing leadership when poverty is on a high increase, when you can't just deal with the basic and people can't actually feed? So these are the fundamental issues when we talk about leadership. People want to be happy. They want to be happy. People want to feel safe. It's not too much to ask, because the fact that they belong to this state called Nigeria or belong to any country, they have some rights that they enjoy by identifying as citizens of this country. And so the leaders have that responsibility to do what? To make that provision.
So I think the independent candidacy will add a lot, because the Not Too Young to Run bill that was passed and made into law in the constitutional amendment, I feel like a lot of young people are really wrestling to then take advantage of the independent candidacy, so that they can have a shot at actually taking on that mantle of leadership that we are all looking for. So you put out an article lately, and it was on Oxford's blog, and several blogs locally and internationally. It talks about the EMBs and their challenges to autonomy. Now you spoke about that earlier in our conversation. So what are some of the challenges to autonomy? How can we navigate this? I feel like we're stuck there in terms of the autonomy of EMBs in Africa. How do we navigate that?
Therefore, you see, it boils down to individuals. When you have political leaders who don't have regard for the rule of law, they don't have regard for the rule of law. What you have is this chaos and confusion in society. Because our society is dominated by people who don't have single respect for the rule of law. And when you now have institutions that are weak, that can't hold them to account, you just have impunity reigning supreme in society. That's what you have. You have a constitution that is clear. And this is a Nigerian situation. The constitution is very clear that for people who are appointed into electoral commissions, they must be non-partisan, and they must not belong to a political party, and they must be of unquestionable character. Because you see, for election is a game, right? And in a game, you have an umpire. If an umpire becomes partial, it means justice will not be served. That is why in a football game, the referee is detached, is neutral, and is impartial. And we have seen cases where once there is a perception of partiality and non-neutrality on the part of an umpire, it undermines the outcome or the acceptability of the outcome of a game, becomes undermined. And that can lead to political instability, because elections are a driver of conflict anywhere in the world. And so if people don't accept, the outcome, if people feel they've been shortchanged, if people feel a sense of injustice, expect them to do what? To respond. To think that you would serve people injustice and they don't respond, I think is foolhardy. And so when governments and political leaders decide to undermine electoral commissions, right, and they choose what? Not to appoint people who are non-partisan, They just simply want to have an electoral commission that will do their bidding. And they are substituting public good for their own private interest. That is corruption. That is an abuse of the rule of law. And more importantly, it is anti-democratic to do so. And that's why in the article that you speak about, I reflected on the challenges of autonomy, both financial autonomy and operational autonomy. And within, depending on the constitutional designs, because there are three different models of electoral institutions. You've got an independent model, you've got a semi-independent model, and then you have a mixed model of electoral commissions. In some countries, the elections are conducted by a department, a unit within a government ministry or department. In some cases, you have an independent organization that conducts elections, just like we have in Nigeria. In some countries, you have a mixed model where you have both an independent body as well as a government institution that work together to conduct elections. And what happens is you have a board, and then you have an executive that manages, the conduct of elections. The board will be responsible for the policies and providing oversight on the other officers. So depending on the constitutional design that is adopted, autonomy is very critical. And it comes in operation. I talked about operational autonomy, and this relates to the guidelines and the operational procedure. Who is determining the operational procedure for the commission? Who is determining the things like the guidelines that are issued by the commission? In our case in Nigeria, the Electoral Commission is vested with the powers to determine that. Things like financial autonomy I've talked about, how and when and how much is released to the Electoral Commission to conduct the elections are very critical to the autonomy of election management bodies. And my conclusion is that we need to safeguard the autonomy of electoral institutions if we want to have credible elections that inspire confidence on the part of the voters, but more importantly, that promotes democratic consolidation.
Thank you so much for that, Samson. I think that you really broke it down in a way where the audience will understand that the EMBs, like INEC, are an umpire in a game. So if the umpire is partial, then it will undermine the outcome of the game or the elections as we know it. So I'm just going to tell the audience I'm going to be asking Samson his final question. So I see a few questions in the audience. If you have any more questions, please put them down in the comments, and then we'll take care of that, and then have a discussion in terms of answering your questions. So now Samson, the final question, I think you already alluded to that. There's already a sense of apathy among citizens in Africa concerning election results. And you mentioned several scenarios in which that happens with regards to the political parties, the quality of leaders, or they get elected and they don't know what they are supposed to do. So now I wanted to just put the finger on us as citizens of the continent. What is our role in ensuring credibility and transparency?
We do have a critical role to play. Frederick Douglass said, vigilance is the ultimate price you pay for liberty. I think in terms of the role that citizens have to play, one, you have a role to participate in the process. That's the voice that you have. Voting at elections is critical. Getting on the voters register. As you know, Nigeria has just started the voter registration, and in the voter registration, we've got online registration, so you can register online and vote. Don't just scream, don't just shout, don't just criticize. Try to get on the voters register and vote, because your vote is your power, your vote is your voice. It gives you an opportunity to recruit the leaders that you want. So that's first. The second point is, showing up at elections. And when you show up at elections, ensuring that you do what? you stay there after you cast your votes to keep watch over the process. When the best way to stop election rigging is by flooding, the polling stations in our large numbers. So turning up to vote is one way to stop people rigging the elections. When people are not there, the politicians become emboldened, to subvert the process and intimidate the polling officials or even compromise them. But if they see, people are watching, they will retrace their steps, and it will discourage them. It will actually deter them, and that's one thing we can do. So that's one role we have to play. The third is the role that social media plays. It's good to have this conversation. Unfortunately, the Nigerian government put a ban on Twitter. We hope that they will lift that ban because it's repressive and an oppression, and that shouldn't stand in any way. So we hope they remove that. And so we'll use social media to expose any form of electoral corruption and malfeasance. Reach out to INEC. There are civil society organizations like YIAGA Africa and other groups who are involved in election observation. We can amplify these reports and these stories during elections, and then ensure that the relevant institution take action on them. But I just want to say, and perhaps the fourth point on the role that we can play as citizens beyond observing and monitoring these elections is actually understanding the electoral law and our constitution. I think it's very important. Currently, the National Assembly is attempting to pass a legislation that prohibits INEC from deploying technology from calculation of results. They want to ban electronic transmission of results. And the reason why they want to do that is they want to rig the 2023 elections, because they will write results and then force polling officials to declare the results, and there's nothing there to serve as a check. But if they transmit the results electronically, it will serve as a check on the manual process. So we should support electronic voting, speak out, and engage the electoral reform process. Call your legislators, because if they're going to rig these elections, they will start by compromising and inserting certain laws into the Electoral Act. So it legitimizes, their corrupt practices. And we must stop them, because that's the role that we have to play as citizens. And for me, YIAGA Africa and other partners that we've been working with, we are going to try as much as possible to stop, these politicians who don't have our interest at heart, and make sure they do not substitute public interest with their private interest. Because in any case, they are a creation of the Constitution, they are a creation of the people. They got there because the people voted them, even though some of them stole the votes or apportioned votes to themselves. But at the end of the day, it's about what we, the people, want. And we must not renege on our commitment as a people and in our responsibility to hold leaders to account. That is how democracy survives. That is how democracy flourishes.
Thank you for that. In fact, you're really talking about that citizens need to come together and use their people power in terms of making sure they monitor the polling units to make sure that there's transparency and accountability, and make sure that they're actually part of the process in terms of advocacy, talking to their legislators and actually working with organizations like YIAGA Africa and others to see how they can continue to advocate for laws that are being covertly passed to undermine the process. So, Samson, we're going to be going to the audience. I have a question from Samuel Ikani. It says, how can we successfully do away with godfatherism in Nigerian politics? Do you think it's possible? It seems to impact on the internal political party politics. What is your opinion on different geopolitical zones for an office like the presidency?
When you talk about godfatherism, the point is, what are the roles of godfathers? There's a difference between a godfather and a mentor. And this fundamental difference, it's about the operational relationship as well as the expected outcome of that relationship. A mentor provides you a guide, provides you strategic advice, doesn't impose on you. A godfather imposes on you. A godfather expects returns, and sometimes these returns can be a monetary value. They can be via social benefits, if you wish, and they could be in kind, like we would normally say. And we've got to reduce the role that godfathers play in our politics, particularly what you may term as negative godfatherism. Um, if a godfather expects you to be loyal to him as opposed to loyal to the fidelity of the constitution that you swore to protect, or disloyal to your people just to serve his own agenda and his own goals, I don't think that's a path to subscribe to. And I want to completely discourage that, because that's a fundamental problem within our current political system. And so the way to do away with this is, say, build social capital with your people. At the end of the day, it's the people that vote. Godfathers don't vote directly. They're also entitled to one vote. But maybe their influence and the resources that they have may give them the power, the economic power, and their influence to mobilize votes for you. My sense is the terms of the relationship needs to be defined, and if it runs contrary or in conflict with your values, that as an individual, please do not compromise your values because you want to secure the support of a particular godfather. Because the more you do that, others would follow suit, and that's how we continually perpetuate this culture of godfatherism within our political space. Does it have an impact on internal politics, party politics? Yes, it does. But can we get to a point where we distribute and decondense power in political parties and make power accessible to the people? The whole notion of democracy, it's about people power. And we've got to reverse this. So my goal is, how do we ensure that people retain the power, reclaim the power that they ought to have? And the way to do that is to organize, is to get people who share the same values, build that strong relationship with those people, and place a demand on the system. I have not seen across the world where people who build cohesion, driven by vision and resilience, place a demand on institutions and they don't get the response. Even if they don't get the response immediately, but the response definitely comes along the way.
Thank you so much. So
I think
he was talking about geopolitical zones. Yeah, the variant to geopolitical.
This country is a diverse country. Should that be a definition should that be one of the qualifications or one of the considerations? I say yes. But it can't be the only determining factor. We need to look at things like capacity, competence, and character. But we must balance rotation of power, because we're a pluralistic society. And as you distribute power across different, whether micro or macro nationalities, you address a lot of issues relating to disaffection and the fact that people will not feel excluded. But when you make, certain political office the exclusive preserve of some people, you're going to run into problems as a society. And that is the bane of our problem in Nigeria.
Exactly. Okay, so we have another question by Elizabeth Olupinsaye. Is our vigilance enough to deter electoral malpractice? What more can be done, and by who, to ensure transparency in our electoral process, to ensure that votes count?
Nothing is ever enough. Vigilance is not enough, but vigilance is one. We are not even exerting enough vigilance, honestly, because you go through a lot of elections, you don't see observers, you don't even see citizens coming out to vote. If you talk about vigilance, 84 million people registered to vote in 2019. Only 29 million came out to vote. That's about 34%. Vigilance for me will be 60 to 70% of people coming out to cast their vote and waiting until the results are counted and results are declared. We cannot rely on election observers to continually observe elections. Citizens observers need to emerge, and assert their power. Because electoral participation, it's not just the right to political participation. There are several rights that are embedded in that whole concept of electoral observation or electoral practice. One is in freedom of expression. When you vote, you're actually expressing an opinion because you're choosing a candidate, right? And so it's a human right. When and to exercise that right, you need certain information, and you need information about party manifestos. You need information about data, number of registered voters from INEC. This information are information that you have a right to access. But if you don't instrumentalize that right, if you don't activate the right, no one is just going to give it to you on a platter of gold. You need to place a demand. So democracy, I can't help but say democracy is about negotiation. You need to engage on a regular basis. Don't just sit back and think that, oh, a little vigilance is enough. No, we need more vigilance. And it's not just on election day. It cuts across the entire electoral cycle. And that's the point that I'm making. That what more can be done? We need to go beyond election day. Voter registration is on. INEC is releasing weekly updates on the number of people who are registering. That's fine, right? Can we take it a step higher? As we keep aggregating this data, how many people are going to collect their PVCs? We should know the number of people who collect their PVCs. We should even know how many people, are facing challenges with the system. Are there any challenges? These are things that we should be interested in. If we look at this, what does data tell us? Are there blind spots or dark spots? What's the electoral geography of those places? Is INEC as an institution trying to marginalize or disenfranchise other people from other regions, from participating in the process? Because there are several misinformation out there in public that we don't interrogate. But we have to keep watch on these institutions. I've talked about the Electoral Law. I've talked about, INEC, but even the political parties as well have a critical role to play. So when we talk about transparency, it's not just transparency in the voting process. It's also transparency in the candidate nomination process. Anambra elections is just days or weeks or months away. Are we asking these parties, how did they select, how did they nominate their candidates? There are several cases in courts challenging the eligibility of candidates. These are discussions that we as a people, we need to be interested in, whether or not we are members of these political parties. Because these parties fill these candidates to us, and then we have no option but to vote for this candidate. So we need to ask them, those questions. So those are things that we can do as a people.
Interesting. So let's get to this question. This is from YouTube. Mr. M. Henry Inaholo. He said, Mr. Itodo is on point, but how do we navigate the already corrupted electoral system? How do we simplify the party election to weed out money politics?
It's always a how question. Honestly, if you ask me, I don't even know how. I'm also looking for solutions, on how we can navigate this already corrupted electoral system. I think one way we can navigate the system is to understand the system and understand how the system works. You cannot beat a system without understanding it. So understand how it works. And the best way to understand this are several ways. Look at the institution. What's the institutional culture? There are political parties we know today who will never conduct primaries, but they will field candidates. Right? Why is that happening? And so, if you're going to reverse that, you need to ask yourself, who are those who are the decision makers within those institutions? And political scientists or those in public policy will call them veto players. Who are the veto players in that political party? Whose decision determines what happens in the party? So who are they? How can you influence them? What are they interested in? What are their priority interests, right? You need to understand this and then engage from a point of information by studying them. We also need to know who do we ask the right questions, which institutions should we be addressing them to, and what and what's the best time to ask them those questions. That's a way to navigate this corrupt system. If you don't know that there's an EFCC or there's an ICPC, if you don't know the roles that the EFCC plays and the ICPC plays, there's no better way you can engage them effectively. If you don't know that in the National Assembly there's a committee on public petitions where you can submit a petition and the National Assembly can take action, you're not going to be able to engage. If you don't know there's a Human Rights Commission that has a public complaint mechanism where you can register, any complaints, you cannot navigate the system. So you need to understand the system, know the institutions, know their duties and their responsibilities, and know the entry points. I give you a classic example. One of the things YIAGA Africa has done with other partners, is to petition the National Assembly and ask them to reject Loretta Oneche, who is a presidential aide of the president and a member of the ruling party, who has been nominated to be part of, as a National Commissioner of INEC. In our quest to defend the Constitution, we've written a petition to the National Assembly and the committee. They are considering the petition. But while they consider the petition, just this morning, we have filed a case in the Federal High Court, Abuja, challenging Loretta Onoche's nomination because it is unconstitutional and it's a considered opinion that the president violated the Constitution. So we've taken it to the court and let the court decide. So these are, actions that you can take, and don't be tired, because democracy is a process, is a journey. It's not an event. You win some, you lose some. When you lose, you don't get discouraged. You just stay hopeful, because hope must never die in this struggle to bring our country back to the path of progress.
At all. So I have two more questions and then we'll round up. This one is more of a comment and a question. So it says, many people believe that INEC needs to be more independent by enforcing stringent measures against monetary politics and allow e-voting and electronic results collating system to reduce vote buying and ballot snatching and other vices. What are your take on these concerns? I think you covered these two issues briefly.
I endorse the proposal.
Yeah, so that is that was one of that, and then there's another one by Mr. Greg Enaholo. He said, "What is your opinion of Nigerians in the diaspora registering and participating in our elections?"
The thing with this question is, he said Nigerians in diaspora. The fact that they are Nigerians, regardless of their location, their citizenship is what determines and what informs and confers on them the rights to participation. It doesn't matter wherever they are. But you have a very hostile legal and constitutional framework that precludes them from participating. And I've always said this a couple of times for several years, that Nigerians in diaspora are Nigerians. We shouldn't bifurcate and try to classify them as non-Nigerians by limiting their rights to participate. Yes, there are logistical issues, but Niger, that sometimes we will consider an appendage of Nigeria, and I say this jokingly, conducts diaspora voting. Why would a country like Nigeria not allow Nigerians in diaspora to vote? Today we are registering online. Nigerians in diaspora will go on to register, but they cannot complete the registration because the biometric capture requires them traveling all the way to Nigeria. It's unfortunate. Why can't our high commissions, conduct, the biometric registration?
Exactly.
In any case, if Nigerians in the UK and the US want to apply for their passports, they do so in the Nigerian High Commission. I just think it's just inexcusable and unacceptable that our legal regime does not allow diasporans to vote. And we have advocated for this. The Constitution needs to be amended. The Constitution review process is on now. We hope that they would amend the provisions of the Constitution that allow our fellow brothers and sisters who are living outside Nigeria to exercise their right, because this denial of the right to vote is injustice on their part.
Exactly. Thank you so much for answering all those questions, Samson. So we just want to have you round up and let us know your final thoughts on the path to credible elections in Nigeria. Is it possible? Are we on our way in Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa in and of itself? How far do we have to go to get to that?
We're very, very far. We're very far. But what is important is we're on the right track. Democracy is not a destination. Democracy is not an event. Democracy is a journey. And at this juncture of this journey, we've got to review our processes. But I'm very, very optimistic, F1, that we're going to get to that destination. And for me, that destination is a peaceful, prosperous society where justice is for all and not for those who can afford it. And it's that country and that continent where we the masses are indeed determining and influencing how our society should be governed without any form of interference or hijack by this top 1%, that seem to have all the economic might to influence the way society is governed. And that is the kind of society that I hope that as we engage in this democratic expedition, we will get to that point. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Please keep doing this great work, and we're always here to support. And those who have joined, please also go up, continue to support FWA and this very impactful work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Samson, and we definitely appreciate it. We will be streaming this again on Wednesday for those who were expecting us to be there on Wednesday, and we're going to have a robust conversation again about the electoral process in Africa. Again, Samson, I definitely appreciate you, and we all do too.
Thank you.
So take care.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. Again, thank you all so much for watching Devsectorseries. This episode with our very own Mr. Samson Itodo, the Executive Director of YIAGA Africa Initiative. I hope in our discussion we're able to answer the multi-million-dollar question: are credible elections attainable in Africa? I have a couple of quick announcements. The next session of Devsectorseries, that's next week, Wednesday, is with Crystal Chigbu, who is the Executive Director of the Irede Foundation. Crystal and her organization, Irede Foundation, were featured on CNN's African Voices in 2019 about their great work with child amputees and how she maximizes social impact. So she will join us on our regular scheduled time next week, Wednesday at 12 noon. If you want to join us live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, remember to join my mailing list to be notified when we go live, and connect on our social media as well. Again, you all, take care, and let's change the world together.